All right, I think there we go. We are live. Welcome to everybody that is watching on Facebook. If you're watching on YouTube as well, we're going to get started here in a minute. We are talking today about the small business impact that obviously this crisis has had. We've all heard a lot about this. We've read the headlines. We've seen what's going on, but we wanted to get a little bit more of a deeper dive on a couple of different issues in particular and how it's affecting business owners in our own community and businesses that have to think about this more long term and what are they looking at to do right now. So we're going to kind of go through this discussion. I have a lot of special guests with me today, and I appreciate them all being here. But before we start, let's make sure that if you are watching Facebook or YouTube, if you can drop something in the comments that says that you can hear us. So a number 1 is great. So we can make sure that we are not having any technical issues, as we know a lot of people have been this time since everyone's online all the time. So let's make sure that we get some people in there, and I can't check it because now my screen's not up. We're good. Okay, looks like we're good. And throughout this, if you want to check in with us, make sure if you're not having any technical difficulties, you can do #live to let us know that you are watching. If you are having technical problems, let us know, and we'll make sure that we try to figure out what's going on. So I'm going to start by introducing our panelists here, and they're all actually people that have gone through this experience in some way or have some insight into it. So we're going to start with LD23's Seth is also a small business owner and has gone through the experience of applying for PPP funding. So we're going to talk about that. But Seth, do you want to say anything else about why you're here today?
No, I'm just here as a small business owner, trying to explain the process for getting these loans and sort of the trials and tribulations of trying to get these loans.
And we appreciate you being here. And on another broadcast, I think you and I should talk about voting rights and why your opponent is so against them. So we'll get to that in another time. But thank you for being here. We're going to move on to Stephen Chilton, who I know as Psycho Steve. He has been in the music industry here for I don't know how long, but we all have some roots back together. And he's the owner of the Rebel Lounge. And we're really happy to have you here to talk about what's happening, particularly in that industry. Welcome, Steve.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
And the Psycho Steve, for those of you that are watching, is not anything about him. It's his brand name.
I always like to say it's ironic, but I don't know if people agree.
If it's ironic,
no.
Yeah. It's his brand as promoting business for the music industry. So thank you for being here. And we'll talk about, he has received PPP loans, but what is different in the industry, music industry, venues, artists, restaurants. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then we have Whitney Walke, who is a candidate for Board of Supervisors for District 3. And Whitney, can you tell us what District 3 encompasses?
Yes, of course. So District 3 encompasses Central Phoenix, North Phoenix, all the way up to Anthem, all of Paradise Valley, and the areas west of Scottsdale Road in Scottsdale. So a good chunk of Maricopa County.
Okay, great. And thank you for being here as well. So let's get started. I think we are possibly having technical issues. No, we're good. Okay, we're good. So we are going to get started. And I really wanted to talk to both Seth and Stephen. I'm mixing your names in. That wasn't good. About your experience with the PPP funding. So Seth, why don't you start? You still have not received anything, but you're getting progress. But can you take us back to when you started this process? Do you remember the date?
Sure. So I don't remember the exact date, but I can tell you that we applied for the payroll protection program the very first day it was available. So Congress passed it. Then we waited for banks to put up their applications online. And the very first day that it was up on the website, we were applying. So is there feedback, or is that just me?
I don't hear any feedback. Are we hearing any feedback? Anybody in the watching live? You are hearing feedback?
Yeah, just a little.
Okay. Okay. So also there was So first of all, there was the first type of relief was something called the disaster relief loan. That was the first thing that was available. So in mid-March, when this first started becoming, we were going to see that the economies were going to start shut down. Everyone was going to stay at home. We went on and it's EIDL, but it's a disaster relief loan for things like hurricanes. and coronavirus was included in this. And these were low interest loans offered by the Small Business Administration. You can get up to $2 million, I believe, was the upper limit, and at the rate of 4%, which is an absolutely amazing rate that I certainly cannot borrow at. So we applied as soon as we could. I can tell you that within 3 days, we had filled out the application 3 times because they changed the application 3 days in a row, I think to allow more people to fill it out. So we were like diligently checking it, and we finally applied. And then we have 3 different businesses, so we applied for all 3 businesses. And one thing about these loans was that there was a checkbox for if you would like to receive $10,000 advance in your bank account in 3 business days, like guaranteed. So we checked the box. That did not happen. We did not see any of this money. Actually, a couple days ago, we started to see a bit of this money, and that's a month and a half later. So also on this loan, quickly, so it's supposed to be up to $2 million, but they ended up everyone was thinking they were going to get a good amount of money to offset the revenue decrease that we were all seeing. But what we ended up getting was $4,000 for one of our businesses. And what they changed the formula was, I believe, is to $1,000 per employee. So in one of our retail stores, we have 4 employees, so we got $4,000. Now, larger companies or small or companies were expecting to be able to borrow hundreds of thousands or even $1 million for this program, and it turned out just to be $1,000 per employee. So that was greatly disappointing. So the payroll protection program became available, I believe, early this month. If someone else knows the date, please. And the idea behind this was that basically they would loan you based on your payroll, so you could get basically 250% of your monthly payroll, and if you keep paying your employees. Right. So the idea was to incentivize business owners to keep paying your employees. Even if you were shut down, if you continue to pay your employees, you would receive this money. The great thing about this loan is so you could borrow up to 10 weeks, but they were gonna forgive 8 weeks of that. So not just a low interest loan for 10 weeks of your payroll, but actually, basically at the end of the day, free money for a large percentage of that. I'll let you jump in. I've been talking.
I don't know.
Yeah. So initially it was the way.
Yeah, you're getting a little fuzzy for me. I'm having a hard time. Your audio is coming in and out a little bit. So.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So a little bit more about the payroll protection program. So the disaster relief loan was available directly through the Small Business Administration website. The payroll protection loans, they did through traditional lenders. So it went through banks like Chase, Wells Fargo, smaller banks. And so basically the first day it was available, Bank of America was the first one I could see that put up their application. It was Friday evening. We do not bank with Bank of America, so we were not able to apply for that. Wells Fargo, who we do bank with, got up at some point over the weekend, and by the time we got to the application, it said they had already hit their max limit on the number of applications they would take. And then finally, I believe Monday, Chase was up, and we also do bank through Chase. So we were able to fill out an application through Chase that Monday. As of today, we have not received any of the money, but we finally did after weeks, get our first update yesterday, which is it's now past Chase. It's been approved by Chase. Now it goes to the SBA for their approval. So we've made forward progress, and I feel very excited about that.
Yeah. Do you want me to jump in on that, or so we?
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, we originally had applied for one of my businesses, banks with Bank of America, and originally everyone was saying they were only going to take existing clients. So the one business applied through Bank of America. They actually had a pretty good web portal and process to get applied initially, and upload your documents and all that sort of stuff. The other Rebel Lounge was through Wells Fargo, and they were late letting you get applicants, and then was even later getting the docs. Meanwhile, we started reaching out to a lot of smaller banks initially, and a lot of smaller banks said that they were only doing existing clients at that time too, when this is when the first round first opened. Then at some point through that process, they said, okay, we're opening up to non-members, sort of with the condition that you move your business to us if we get you the loans, or at least implied that. And I was like, yeah, if one of you gets me the two banks that would accept it, if one of you gets me these loans, I'll move my business, like easy. And then the first round I didn't get from any of those three. Did get notice that like when the second round opened up, all three sort of gave notice, or Wells Fargo and Bank of America sort of said, you're in the queue when the next round opens up. And I'm still sort of getting daily emails telling me that. And on Friday, one of the other banks, Western State Bank, started calling me and saying, we're now ready to process yours. Here's the documents you need. Like, please we need to get this done today so that we can put yours into the SBA on this Monday morning. And so Friday afternoon, it was sort of like, I just had to get some, I had most of what to them already. It was just, some corporate docs and stuff like that. And they said, yeah, we've got your signed some stuff on Friday. And then yesterday found out, or 2 days ago, found out we were getting funding for both of those. So through that bank. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so there's two things I kind of want to touch on that both of you brought up or we alluded to that we're seeing. And we have a lot of people in the comments right now and some other small business owners that are frustrated because they're having the same experience or they haven't heard anything back. And particularly, that we've heard that big business got that first round. We've seen that. Arizona specifically, we've looked at in correlation with the unemployment numbers here in Arizona. We got a very small piece of the pie nationally. We were in the top 5 of the lowest to receive the amount. So to receive the lowest amount. And so obviously we know a lot of small businesses are still waiting, but we've also heard small businesses that are saying, I'm worried about taking the money. Did either of you have that doubt because you're worried about the forgiveness piece not being real, not having to meet it? Like there's a lot of confusion around it. Any hesitation?
None at all. I mean, there was a lot of articles when it first came out, like, you're going to have to show that you were affected, like, be able to prove it.
Right.
I haven't been open since 14th. We haven't made $1 in revenue. Like, if I can't prove that, no one can, you know? And so I had zero qualms, saying that that's going to affect us. Are there some other businesses, accounting firms or something that are going to have to go back and show that it affected them? Like maybe, but like bars and restaurants, like whatever standard they need us to prove, like I'll be there,
And also, and my business is actually still open, but there's most businesses I believe are probably in Steven's position, which they have been closed. They have not had $1 come in for so long. Like if someone's offering you, this is survival. Like if someone's offering you money, you take it. You worry about all that other stuff later. This is a matter of literally surviving. And also not just that, like Steven has employees, I have employees. These people depend on that paycheck. They feed their family with that paycheck. And if I don't pay my employees, or if I've been closed and therefore can't pay my employees, people are not going to eat as a result.
Right. Right. I don't know if you guys are seeing the comments, but Rachel said that she submitted a colonoscopy level of documentation and she still hasn't heard anything. And she's actually her business, and I know her through the campaign, and her business is actually in healthcare. So, we're definitely still seeing so many small businesses not receiving this. Steven, you applied 3 different banks. We talked about this a little bit before we got on, that the national banks are really where, people weren't seeing the progress. And Arizona has a very small number proportionally, again, of community banks, but that's finally where you got the money.
Yeah, and I heard a stat, and I don't remember where I saw it, but out of people that got funding in the first round, 65% of that in Arizona came out of a small bank. 65% of the businesses that got it,
right.
Even though small banks make up like 15% of business banking or something. So, I mean, the stats there are just staggering. I mean, then like, Bank of America did have someone call me back at one point asking me some questions about my documents and making, I needed to give them some more documentation. So they did have like a human being at one point reach out to me. Wells Fargo, I still haven't, there's no communication there whatsoever. It's a web portal that doesn't say very much. And, no one can, and they even explicitly say, don't call us. No one will be able to answer your questions, so that customer service there is just non-existent unless you're those big guys.
Right. So I think this is definitely, and Seth, maybe you're running for Senate. This is a policy issue that we need to look at moving forward, of incentivizing more community banking here in Arizona and making sure that the big banks aren't dominating. Right. I mean, this is kind of a lot of what's happening in our country right now with this crisis. I say hasn't broken us because we're strong, we're Americans, but it's showing the cracks. I mean, it's definitely showing the cracks in so much policy and so much that we need to do to protect people in these situations. Have either of you had to, you've been waiting, and I know you've been close, Stephen. So what have you done with your employees in this time? Have you laid them off? Have you said furlough?
Yeah, I mean, we furloughed them right at the beginning. I mean, almost all my employees are event staff. I mean, like I don't have anything, bartenders and security guards, there's nothing for them to do when we're not open. And I think one difference that we've been saying is how, the venues, we really were the first to close and the last open. We were seeing this in February. I mean, we were watching shows in Seattle and in New York get canceled all the way back into February. As soon as South by Southwest canceled that first week of March, we were seeing our events for March canceling. I was telling all my employees this was going to be bad. I think I sat my employees down March 3rd or 4th for the first time to say, I don't know what this looks like. So my first conversation with employees that their hours were going to be cut was 2 weeks before most small businesses started paying attention to this, and I know a lot of small businesses that, were really blindsided when there was this, the stay-at-home order, the closing restaurants. I know restaurant owners who literally the day that order came out went, what's going on? Who had zero idea. I mean, they knew COVID existed. I mean, obviously they're not that clueless, but like didn't realize like, oh, that's going to affect my business. Whereas I was seeing that in February. We were talking about shows canceling that second week of March leading up to the 13th, 14th. I was on the phone all day long with the agents, updating them on what's going on in Arizona. There was one agent I was talking to 3 times a day who we had a show play out at Crescent Ballroom on the 13th, and their show on the 14th in Tucson didn't end up playing. They ended up doing one date of their tour, which was Phoenix. But that agent was like, okay, are we canceling this tour? What are we doing? Because Phoenix and we all knew that the orders were coming. It was just, was this show going to get in a matter of time? Not, I mean, that first week of March, it was when, not if. And so a little bit different for, my employees already were seeing every day we were sending out, here's the change of schedule. Notice there's another day that's black. And so they were seeing it weeks before other people were. So it was a little less shocking than a lot of employees.
For others. Yeah. And the PPP loan lets you do that 75% for your staff. You keep paying them, but you can also rehire. And that's kind of why I was asking that question is, will you have to do so you can rehire? I think it's by what, June 30th? Seth, what about you? Did you have to lay anybody off or?
So I'm in the furniture industry, and we have manufacturing, which is the core of our business, and we employ about 40 people there. Then we have 2 retail stores, each employ about 4 people. Manufacturing on the whole, our business is down a bit. And it's like, first of all, I consider myself extremely lucky that my businesses are allowed to function right now. We're considered an essential business. I think we got lucky that it was included in that. And, Governor Ducey's order was fairly broad as what essential businesses was. And we provide home office furniture, so we're considered essential. But So our manufacturing is down a bit. E-commerce orders have been up, so that's compensated so that we're only down, say, 20%. But we have 2 retail stores, and everyone has been at home now, for over a month or however long. I've lost track of time. But
it's been longer than a month. Yeah.
I've been a long time. No one has come into our retail stores since then. So our retail revenue is.
Even though you're open. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Our doors are open, but so our revenue has dropped to 0. But because we expected to get this loan, we kept everyone employed. We were when this first came, it seemed like it was imminent. There was no like the disaster relief loan sounded like it was going to be 3 days. The PPP loan, no one expected it to be as long as it is. So our employees keep coming into work. We keep paying them, but we're not taking in any money.
Right.
So this is all coming from a place that we don't really have.
Right.
So this has really
been. Apologies, but have you had to take any measures like that? Like, we have a comment actually from the Facebook saying, there's people that had to go into their retirement accounts. People have had to do different things to keep their businesses afloat. Is that something that you guys have had to do, or in any such way yet at this point?
Just on me real quick, and I need a small business, Stephen. When you're a small business owner, everything's on the table. So my credit cards, absolutely. I'm in deep debt as a result. I've taken money out of retirement. You look to borrow money in weird places, saying that, this loan for a lot of money is right around the corner any day now. You justify it, but one of the things I wish is that the federal government, is as long as it's taken, if they would have given me some realistic time frame to begin with, we've been planning for this money for so long. If we would have just been given a realistic time frame at the beginning, that would have done so much good for us.
Right. I want to, we have a question that just came in. Let's see. When are these loans due? And Stephen, if you laid off employees, how does that impact the loan? So Stephen, you put them on furlough, which is a little bit different than laying them off. And so from your understanding, you got your money now. How are you going to, do you know, or are you still having to figure that out? I mean, there's a lot of people confused.
Yeah. I mean, everyone, that's another one that right now needs to come from the top, is that they haven't given good guidelines of what is going to get forgiven and not. One thing is, is assuming there's no fraud and you're not buying a car with it or something, which I don't think any business owner is doing. If you're using it for business uses and they don't forgive it, then it just becomes a very low interest loan. And if you need to do whatever you need to do to survive, great. It's the cheapest. It's the cheapest loan you're going to get.
Right.
And best case, they forgive it all. So we're trying to still figure that out. I mean, but again, it's one where most of my employees, I don't have a work for them to do. So we haven't figured that necessarily out. We're trying to figure out to get as much of it forgiven as possible. But on the other hand, we need to use the money however we need to use it to get by through this. I'd also say more, from the NEVA hat that with our venue association, we're not looking to be open by May 15th. I mean, there's very few venues that expect to be open this summer. There's articles about concerts not returning for 10, 12, 18 months. So some of these business owners are looking at, they're not saying, how do I get to June 30th? We're saying, how do we get to fall 21? How do I get to October 21? And that, I don't know. No one has an answer of how you do that with zero revenue. In our businesses, venues, a lot of them are very large retail spaces. They've got a lot of high overhead. We've got way higher insurance rates than anybody else. We've got larger rents relatively compared to the size of our businesses, so, and we're looking at, I'm hoping I can do concerts this year, not this in the next 2 months.
May 15th.
Yeah, May 15th. I mean, I don't think there's a single venue in the country that thinks they're going to be open in June. Maybe I can be open as we're talking about ideas of how I can open as a bar when things come back, or, do something low key. There's some venues that can open as a restaurant, like Crescent Ballroom. they can get open when this is over as a restaurant, but they're not going to have concerts in the ballroom. So like one of our big asks with NEVA is that we tie this, that, you know, in addition to having some more PPP loans that are set aside for music venues, are that we have some measure that this is until things return to normal, because we know we're going to be on the last end of that. And not only that, other one is our businesses are incredibly interconnected nationally. It's artists going on tour. The Marquee Theater and Celebrity Theater and Rialto Theater and Crescent Ballroom, they survive on artists getting in a van and touring across the country. And so even if the city or the state says, okay, businesses can open, it might be 3 to 6 months until artists actually get on the road. It's not like you can open the Marquee and say, we're open for business and 2,000 people are going to spend $50 to walk in the door. No one walks in until the talent comes back. And the talent's not coming back until they feel safe and feel safe nationwide. Like they can't just add Phoenix. Phoenix, all my shows are tied to LA. If artists can't tour in LA, they're not going to tour to Phoenix. And so whatever we do in Phoenix as far as lifting regulations almost doesn't matter to me, because if artists don't want to tour to LA because of LA's restrictions, that impacts my business in a way a pizza shop it doesn't. You know, a pizza shop isn't looking at what is California saying, what is New York saying, what is Chicago saying. You know, I'm tracking what's going on in it. We're trying to track what's going on in every city and state in the country, because the artists aren't going to tour until there's enough green lights everywhere. And so that's a little different on our businesses than a lot of other businesses, in that it's not just being allowed to open. It's like people need to feel safe to come, both the artist and the audience. And, you know, and that's something we have very little control over. That's outside of any of our hands.
Yeah, I think in general, you know, we've all talked about this, is when it just, let's say it is May 15th that Governor Ducey reopens our state. I don't think a majority of people aren't going to run out and go do something the first day, even in, you know, businesses where you can social distance, but obviously in a venue, that's just not even an option. And how do you get the artists in? And that's going to take a long time. So you referenced the National Independent Venue Association that you have formed with other venues and other venue leaders across the country. And so you're lobbying Congress. I just wanted to bring that up because you referenced it without us explaining it. So you guys are lobbying Congress for additional assistance in a next relief package specifically for this sector of the economy. Do you want to give us a quick couple bullet points, and I'm going to move to Whitney and we're going to talk about, and we'll come back. But.
Yeah, so we started NEVA, the National Independent Venues Association, something like 20 days ago. It's still very fresh. I'm one of the board members of that. We now have 1,150 members nationwide. We're in all 50 states. We're trying to get organized and lobby to Congress for additional help for our industry, and trying to explain that some of the economics and business around us. We're incredible multipliers to our communities, driving other business. People go to dinner before concerts and to drinks after, and order cabs and Ubers and Lyfts, and we're going to be closed for the long haul. And so it's trying to make sure that Congress thinks about that. You know, we're all closed for the public good. We're closed to keep everyone else safe. And if we're going to survive, we need assistance from the public in exchange for that. And, you know, none of us are trying to get open as fast as we can. We're trying to get open safely. And, you know, that's going to be a lot of hard work for a lot of people. And it's not going to be short. It's not going to be quick. It's going to be a long haul. And so when a lot of other businesses are back and hopefully the rest of the economy gets moving, we're going to be the last things. And I think that's also one that makes this time different, is that live entertainment in every recession that has ever come has been the last thing affected. Ticket sales and concerts and movies and things like that are the last thing to get affected in a bad recession. And this time around, they're the first. And that's totally unprecedented. You see AMC Theaters is looking at bankruptcy. There's lots of, you know, they're not part of our association or anything, but you just look they're looking at the same thing.
Yeah.
They're entertainment. They're thinking, how do we come back? And that's what all our members are thinking, is how do we survive to come back? So we need the public's help on that.
Right. So, and I know I'm sure you have all talked about this, and people at Crescent and Jeremiah and you, and a lot of people in the comments are saying virtual concerts, we'll pay that. We'll pay a subscription fee. So just keep that in mind. There's a lot of support for you guys out there.
That is something that we are all talking. I've had 5 or 6 long conversations today about what that might look like, or how that could work, or what piece venues play in that. So that is definitely something we're all thinking about. I don't think any of us have answers, but we're all thinking about it.
So, Stephen, I'm going to move to Whitney a little bit, but if you could, because I know that it was a while ago, I saw that a lot of the venues were doing their different types of fundraisers, or different ways that the community can help. We know it's not a lot, but if there's anything you can put in the comments, I think you could have access to the comments there. We would really appreciate that, and I think everybody watching would as well. And Seth, I don't know if you dropped off, but you're back. Good. Okay, I didn't see you for a minute. We have Whitney here today. Again, she is running for Board of Supervisors, District 3, but really because she is calling out, and I think it's something that we all need to hear about, what is happening with a Board of Supervisors group that has been created to really help with our economic assistance, but yet they are blocking some local possible money that could go to our local businesses. So Whitney, can you give us the overview of what's happening?
Yes, most certainly. So the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors have a board that they appoint that serve a 6-year term, and it's the Industrial Development Authority. So in all of Arizona, only Maricopa County and the city of Phoenix has such body. This body was created to make sure that they spur our economy. So they are there to create jobs. They're there to create affordable housing. They're there to promote economic growth. And they do this by supplying low financing opportunities and loans, and also funding investments for entities or small nonprofits. However, most recently, what has happened is that a very well-respected and well-known staple in the community that's been around for over 40 years applied for some assistance in regards to implementing and allowing for other loans to happen for smaller businesses. They were denied. Without explanation, but more importantly, the Maricopa County IDA did not offer any type of recourse or an alternative plan of how we're going to help our small businesses throughout Maricopa County. I recently just read an article where they're estimating between 19 to 36% of small businesses will not survive COVID-19. And the issue is that Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, in their charter and their mission, is to provide fiscal responsibility. However, they're doing just the opposite. And furthermore, just as the other panelists had said, that, even with venues, when we had the huge announcement that the NBA was suspending all games, we have a NBA team here, we have venues here. So these are a lot of things where the ball has been dropped. And now we're trying to look to see what is actually going to happen when businesses are to open back up. However, they don't have the financial support or resources to facilitate that.
So a lot of people watching don't even know what the Board of Supervisors does, right? You've run into this because you're running for it. And so, and how important it is. And this shows how important it is. So can you give people that are watching kind of what they can do, to help push on this issue? And I know that you're working on it, and what they say, because we get that a lot. It's like, okay, what can I do and what can I say? Give it to me because this is important to me. But again, with people having less knowledge about the Board of Supervisors to start. Now, I think on the Board of Supervisors right now, we have one Dem, right?
Yeah, one Dem. And there hasn't been a woman since 2012. Mm-hmm. And with the Board of Supervisors, so they have the authority, they have the agency, they have the power to, move this thing forward for small businesses. They have a budget over $2.5 billion that they approve every single year. And this is more so about us having county leadership that is proactive. Everything that has happened has been reactive. Has been something as a result, instead of looking at the numbers, looking at, other populations that's similarly situated to Maricopa County and doing something for our small businesses. More importantly, with the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors, we mentioned about increasing local and community banks. This is something that the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors can include in their strategic plan, should have been included in their strategic plan. There's no reason that hundreds upon hundreds of small businesses are at the brink of closing their doors. I have a lot of friends that are small business owners. And when we are in the 4th largest county in the United States, and yes, government help is there, but even that in itself, as we heard, is very, hit or miss. Our local government should be there to have the resources and have the means to help our small businesses. This is what Arizona thrives on, and it's very unfortunate that the decision was made on April 22nd to deny Chicano Polis Casas the funding that they basically can use to help about 150 small businesses out. And it's really unfortunate. And so, now we're in a point where people don't know what the County Board of Supervisors is. The Board of Supervisors are very receptive of that. They like that idea. They like to continue to stay under the radar. But however, at this point, if we can't count on them during a pandemic, when can we count on them? So.
Yeah, so there is a couple of questions or comments. Let's take a look right now. Community and local banks. And so Karen has brought that up. And also, she's talking about some of the local organizations. And we've seen this as well. There's now a small restaurant association that has started. Local First is doing a lot of great work. A lot of people are trying to kind of bring these businesses together, just like Stephen's doing with the Association for Independent Venues, to figure out how we get around this. But what more can our government leaders do that are in office right now? Seth, do you have any thoughts about, what you would have liked to have seen happen with this in terms of ways that, like I said, we brought up earlier, community banks. Arizona needs to look at this, and I think right now we need to look at maybe bringing our community banks to a roundtable and figuring out how we support them, because they are the ones that are getting this into the right hands and connecting on the ground level with our small businesses.
Yeah, community banks are extremely important, right? It's the idea of having local banks that know the customer, that have a relationship. This is a better product at the end of the day than working with a giant corporation like JP Morgan, Chase, or Wells Fargo. Right. I think there's a lot of lessons that we need to learn from this. And an ongoing problem that I have is access to capital, access to reasonably priced capital. This is something that different levels of government need to look at. Community banks would be a great solution. The whole way this was implemented was obviously completely unfair. The PPP money went to the wrong place. It went to Shake Shack, and it went to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, and it didn't go to the small businesses that it was intended for. And I live in South Scottsdale, and I live like Fifth Avenue, and within a mile of here, there's hundreds of stores that have been closed down for a month, and I doubt any of them have seen any money yet. It's the companies with existing relationship. It's the companies with, in most cases, in those smaller and medium-sized banks, it was customers with existing loans, and the bigger companies, existing loans existing. So these were the people that almost needed it least were getting it, and the rest of people that actually needed it are still waiting.
I'd like to just add in that it's not like those larger companies didn't have access to funds. Like there's $1 trillion went to Treasury that didn't have all the restrictions that we have. That was that $1 trillion went to take care of the Steak Shacks and the American Airlines and the big entities. Like, it's not like they needed to pull into this pool. They have access to that pool and this pool, and we only have access to this pool. So, there is plenty of money for all those big corporations. They just, it's not like there wasn't money set aside for them.
Right. And we all saw those headlines early on with the first, I think it was the second stimulus package, or first one, I think it was the second, with that, right? That the money was going without any strings attached, so they could use it however they wanted. And we know it's
it's kind of confusing. It was Stimulus 3, which is CARES Act 2, or no, CARES Act. So CARES Act or Stimulus 3, and then there was CARES Act. They're calling it Stimulus 3.5 because the second one that this increased funding is, they're working on CARES Act 2 now, which would be CARES Act 2 Stimulus 4, just to make, because this can't not be confusing.
Did either of you do anything with the paid sick leave funds that came in? Oh, it looks like we are having a lot of problems here. Our connection. As an audience, can you see us, or are you just getting a jarbly screen? Let's get some comments in the chat and make sure that we are okay on our connection here. And that's a technical term, jarbly. I'm not even getting comments, so I don't know when we dropped off. Oh, we see Karen sees us. So maybe I guess we are fine. I don't know. On our end, it is looking very, very strange. It almost seems like a show at the Rebel Lounge. If you see my, okay, all right, I had to make that joke. So, and now I just lost my train of thought. You guys know what I just asked you, right?
Paid sick leave.
No, I lost.
Paid sick leave. Yes. First, that was our first push, right? That's the first thing that we saw coming out, is this paid sick leave. Was that something that anyone was utilized on any of your fronts? No.
I was so focused on the PPP and I don't even know the details of this paid sick leave program. What was the deal there?
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean,
so funding to provide for, if anybody in your business had COVID, it was very early. This was a very early initiative that was put out to provide paid sick leave. But particularly, I think, for people that were either affected or could have been affected. So I don't know that most businesses, particularly here in Arizona, since our curve started later, had that. But we have heard some people talking about using that early, and then this, and kind of rolling all these different layers of small business aid. So
something as an operating business, and also someone running for office, it's my employees come into work every day. Now that is not good in the whole idea of social distancing, of not trying to reduce the spread of COVID. But luckily, in the manufacturing environment that we have, everyone has masks and glasses and gloves. So this is a semi-protected environment. But still, the fact that business owners have to be put in a position where they're making a moral question: am I doing the right thing by allowing my employees to come to work? Now they need a paycheck, so I think I'm doing the right thing because I know they need to feed their children. But it is at the same time, am I putting their health at risk? So a larger program of paid leave. The goal of this entire thing was people staying at home. But not running out of money. An entire program of giving money to employers to give to their employees to stay at home really would have been a very better program than what I'm taking part in.
Right. I'm a huge proponent of paid sick leave across the board. Been talking about it since we started this in 2017. And again, showing us the cracks of all the things that we've needed to do legislatively, both federally and at the state level, to make sure that people aren't in these situations. And this isn't just, the paid sick leave is not just about COVID-19. Productivity goes up when you let people take care of themselves and they don't come to work infecting others with the flu or whatever it may be at the time. I mean, this is common sense to some degree, and it is common sense. And there's a lot of work to be done, and something that I think, Seth, probably your campaign is working on you as well, as terms of where do we go from here policy-wise. It's something that we're looking at consistently. But right now, I want to see if there's any questions, because we are yes, and Jenna says, and it's very true, sick leave for everyone except the exposed healthcare workers. And our healthcare workers and everybody on the front lines right now that is struggling, we feel for them and know that that's where we need to be putting resources as well. This is something that everybody has a need, and we're coming up short. So there's some comments in here about PPP loans and when they're forgiven, and I think that's just some informational info. I'm just making sure there's no question. Anybody on Facebook or on YouTube have any questions? We are about 15 minutes out and just want to check in with everybody.
Can I just chime in while we're waiting, getting some question? Yeah. I would definitely like to see in Arizona, especially from Maricopa County, being that we are the 4th largest county, to have conversations among our leaders to have a economic recovery task force. Because I think also too what happens, and I'm so fortunate that I was able to join this this webinar, this conversation, is we're putting so much focus on restaurants, where we do have other small type of venues and services and businesses that are suffering tremendously. And I think they should also be part of the conversation. And so, with that economic recovery task force can really start to put equitable policies in place to make sure that we are really protecting all of our small businesses.
Yeah, we definitely need to look at every industry. And I think that, the conversation in the media too, those things tend to get lost when we're thinking about how this impacts a manufacturing business, how this impacts a venue. And so I agree with that. I think that's a wonderful idea. It looks like someone's asking what we think of the stay-at-home status direction. I think, I'm glad Governor Ducey is waiting for data, which is what we need to do. If you don't have contact tracing or you don't have testing, and we know in Arizona we don't have enough, we can't make any assumptions that it's safe to reopen. Do I think it'll extend longer than May 15th? I think we might need to, but we'll see. I also would love to get the economy going again for all our small businesses. This is a very hard thing to do and for our leaders, but we need to, as long as we are having that test that is supposed to be occurring now. So we'll see the numbers. There's nothing that can be said until that data is in. I don't know if any of you have other thoughts on that.
I think that we definitely need to wait.
No? Okay.
I definitely think we need to,
go ahead.
I think it's getting stuck. I definitely think we need to wait for the data to come in, but we do need to have conversations of how we're going to support our small businesses so they can prepare for the reopening. We have to acknowledge that that's going to be costs, unexpected costs, unexpected, resources and things like that. So I definitely think that those conversations need to be had to support our small businesses.
Looking at data, listening to experts is a lesson to learn here, and that could have. That's a lesson that could have prevented this entire situation. One of the reasons we're here is because basically we have people that run things that don't listen to the experts who were saying, let's prepare for this. Let's get testing in order. Let's get protective gear in order. Let's do contact tracing when it first hit our shores. We were completely handled the situation incorrectly because of a lack of listening to experts and believing in data. On the policy front, also, I'd like to say that Arizona has the second lowest unemployment insurance in the nation, and people are really suffering. So at every level of government, there's lessons we're going to have to take and apply. We really need, as a public health emergency, on a larger level, I really think we fumbled the ball on this. The fact that we are the state that we are, and we need to be prepared for the next time this happens.
Stephen, again, I'm mixing the names. Can you guys hear me? I'm having a connection problem.
I hear you fine.
Yeah, we can hear you.
All right, good. Do you have any thoughts? This affects you so differently, and we kind of talked about the long term of this. But as a citizen, as an individual in our community, how do you feel?
The one is that people have to feel safe to come out. It's not just when can we throw a date on the calendar. There's got to be. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know I'm not a healthcare expert. I'm not. But telling me when I can open versus when people feel safe are coming to my business are two very different things. Right. And the one is going to happen long before the other one does. And I'm thinking about this, I'm thinking about the second. When are people going to feel safe to come to my events? When are artists going to feel safe? And that is a very different question than when the governor and the mayor lift any orders on us. The other one is some of these other cities and states that have sort of put out roadmaps or plans, that are closed now. they have a 3 and 4 phase plans of phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. And a lot of them, concerts are phase 4 with no idea of when that is. You know, there's benchmarks for phases 1, 2, and 3, and then there's no benchmark for 4. Well, I'm in category 4 with no benchmark. So, you know, depending on how that goes. So, you know, whether it's May 15th or May 30th may not, like, what other businesses are looking at may not be very relevant to me at all that date. It's when do people feel that they can come out, and when do the artists feel they can come out, and how we get there probably matters dramatically. You know, do people feel testing is there? Do people feel that hospitals are there? Do people feel that, you know, this is working? And that's very different than what Ducey decides to do. And, you know, or any other governor, or any other mayors.
Right.
So
we have a question, and people have been joining throughout this, and so I wanted to go back to this one, and it was specifically about he heard the application process in the beginning was often too complicated for the smaller businesses, and so the bigger businesses got this. And we touched on this a little bit, but really, you know, it sounds like a lot of what you both experienced in specifically was that there was a lot of changes up front, right? Things were not really clear. People were putting stuff up. It wasn't open. It was open. So I think, yes, probably small businesses didn't have the resources or the ability, whereas the big businesses had that banking relationship with a big bank. And possibly that's why a lot of this happened the way it did. Would you agree with that, or anything else you want to add? Either one of you?
Well, I mean, one is that, you know, when you're talking about handing out hundreds of billions of dollars of government money, I don't think the process should be completely frictionless. Trying to get a lot of documentation together doesn't seem that unreasonable. But then again, you know, my staff is cut short, and I'm, you know, trying to find all those records and trying to do all that. It was, you know, several days of, you know, trying to go and dig up all my payroll records to figure that out. Like, I couldn't even, it took several days of work to figure out what I did qualify for as far as the dollar amount. So it was a lot of work. But I don't, you know, I don't know if that necessarily was wrong.
So maybe not complicated, maybe isn't the word. And for his question, maybe it's that it was confusing. I mean, I think, like you said, you went to one, it was open, then you had to change it 3 times. Maybe, I mean, I don't know. This is something that we'll never really know what happened in everybody's scenario and why a lot of small businesses got left out. But
one is, though, that, I mean, there was just so little guidance, and there was a lot of, you know, at first they were saying 1099 employees were going to, or 1099 was going to count. And that's, the law actually says 1099s in there, although it's kind of vague what is.
Right.
So I was working that out, and I 1099 a lot of artists. I mean, my 1099 is dramatically larger than my payroll. And then Treasury came out and said, oh, no, 1099s don't count. And it was like, oh, well, that dramatically changes what I'm looking at. So there was a lot of lack of guidance. And at first they said, don't apply for multiple banks or we'll consider it fraud. You know, there was guidance saying it could be considered fraud if you apply multiple times. So I know a lot of people only applied with one bank. And then they came out and said guidance that, no, you can apply with multiple banks. You just can't accept you can't accept the money multiple times. I know a lot of people that didn't reach out to other banks because the original guidance that we were all reading said don't apply multiple times. And they changed that when they realized how many of us in these big banks weren't getting serviced, and they're like, oh, we need to let these people go somewhere else. So it was definitely confusing.
Yeah, the process
and needlessly confusing.
Yeah, the process at the beginning was, I mean, for the PPP, you know, watching different banks go up with different applications at different times was frustrating. But Stephen and myself and everyone else, we were all, I think, more motivated to get this paperwork right than we ever have been in anything in business before, because we all desperately needed this money. So the complications, you know, we didn't find that too cumbersome. It was the changing of the applications. It was the different banks coming up at different times and having different amounts of loans they were willing willing to process. It was, I mean, the real part about it being easier for larger businesses, you know, certainly they can get their financial documents, you know, out there much more easy. But it really was the, you know, if you have an existing relationship and if you have an important relationship with a bank, then you go first. And, you know, there was, I don't think there was any direction to the banks about what order to do this in. Was it random? Was it, you know, from the bottom up? And what ended up happening was from the top down. You know, the bank, Chase went to its most important clients first and said, you know, you get the money. And, you know, on the grand scheme of things, Chase doesn't really care about me. And that's why I've yet to see the money.
Other one, though, to explain that from the banks, I know a lot of banks did it where they prioritize people that had existing loans to them, not just accounts. And they saw it as, these people are in trouble. They owe us money. We can use this government money to secure them, which, you know, secures their liabilities. And if it's, we're going to loan out $1 billion to either businesses that don't owe us money or $1 billion to businesses that do owe us money, even though they can't necessarily use that money to pay back, but it helps secure those businesses that have credit to them. And it's understandable that if allowed to do that, that's the way they did it. I mean, I can't say that if I was a bank, I wouldn't be going, yeah, I'm taking care of my existing customers. It's totally rational from their perspective of, who am I going to spend hours? I mean, the bank, everyone working on these banks has been working as frantically as all we were to process this. So who are they going to process and work frantically for? The people that they don't know or the people that they do? So rational the banks did that. Whether they should be allowed to is a different question.
Is exactly the point. They shouldn't have been allowed to. There should have been that because it is human nature.
Yeah, they didn't do anything that didn't make sense for their, you know, for their business, and, you know, I don't think that's how it should work, but it makes sense that that's whose call are you going to return first? You know, it just makes sense. So.
And so it brings us kind of almost full circle back to Arizona needs more community local banks. We need to incentivize that and change how we do that piece of finance business here in our state, because those are the banks that are going to have those connections to the smaller businesses and the people in the ground and the area more underserved. So we are just almost at, go ahead. Oh, I think that was Stephen.
I was just going to say, every single business owner I've talked to that has gotten money, every single one, and across the country, every single one got it from a community bank. I have not talked to one person that I know that got it from one of the big banks. And that's, you know, I'm talking to 1,000 members nationally and haven't heard one say my big bank got me this money.
Right. Let's take a minute or so. There's some other comments and questions coming in, and we'll kind of get back to people after this if we need to, but really wanted to see if there's ways that we specifically can help. So we'll start with you, Stephen. How can we help anybody in the venue business, the music industry right now? What would you recommend as an individual what we can do? Or if it's lobbying Congress, if it's writing to our representatives?
That's what I was going to say, writing to our representatives. And we have a page on NEVA's website to help write a letter to Congress, to your congressman or senator about that. And fortunately, this isn't much of a campaign issue because we need this funding in May, not after November. So, you know, it's really the people now that can decide that, and letting them know that that matters to people. That's the biggest one right now, because I can't tell you to go buy tickets because I don't have very much that's on sale right now. So, yeah.
Okay, great. Seth, anything you want to add?
Yeah, going to smaller community banks, going to just not the large guys was the first major learning point for us. And then it's, you know, it's really a matter of the squeaky wheel gets the grease, you know, writing your representatives, you know, calling your banks, calling I mean, you know, it's a weird thing to say, but being annoying about it, hopefully moves the process along. It's, you know, it's sort of just basic wisdom there, but, you know, be persistent, and, you know, I'm confident our our federal government will come through with us, come through for us on this. And myself, I desperately need the loan, and I'm hoping it comes any day now.
Whitney?
Well, first, I will just say that holding the Maricopa County Board of Supervisors accountable. They have their meetings every other Wednesday. They have special sessions, and also holding the MCIDA accountable, Maricopa County Industrial Development Authority accountable. But more importantly, I think this is a call to action for all of us to change things come November. While we wait, it's really imperative that we know who our representatives are from federal to local elections. Because as you can see, when the federal government drops the ball, it's up to our local governments to secure things for us and protect us and provide for our communities and our businesses, and that's not what they're doing. So call to action come November, let's vote them out.
Yes, let's vote them out. Let's urge everybody now for the action we need for our small businesses and our individuals on unemployment. No, Stephen, particularly your case, if your employees have been successful getting unemployment, that's a whole nother topic. But it's something that we're very concerned about here, particularly with gig workers and contractors and everybody that's still having to wait to even apply here in Arizona until May 12th. So there is a lot of urgent needs now. And as we move forward, looking towards elections, like Whitney said, that's the time we can say, you failed us this time. Like, we need to move forward on these issues. I want to thank you. Rachel says she's called her Congress peeps. Keep calling them, even if they're not your favorite people, because they are the ones, as Stephen said, that can get these things done. We need to explain to them how this is affecting our community and in these different industries in particular. So we have started, and I want to give this a little plug, a group called Neighbors Working Together. Just now, a couple of days ago, it was on Sunday that we soft launched it. And it's really for anybody that you all know out there that's watching, or any of the three of you that needs help financially. So they haven't got their unemployment because we know these delays are longer than they should be. They didn't get a stimulus check. They were in the gaps of that. Whatever the case may be, they're struggling to get by. So what we are doing is matching neighbors together, those that can give directly with somebody that needs the help. It's all private and confidential, but we are making the match direct. And so if you have any employees, any of you small businesses that are watching, anybody that you're concerned about, please send them to neighborsworkingtogether.com. And if you can help, contributions we've seen so far, anything from $50 to $1,000 to help their neighbors. And in a global pandemic, this is a global effort, but we have started here in Arizona. We have had some requests from Florida and Texas, and we've helped some people in New York. But really, it's starting here in Arizona. So just wanted to mention that. Something that we're working hard on as well. So
it's a great cause. Thank you, Anita.
Yes,
well,
it is.
Thank you all for being here. And I really have a huge team that's running that, and I'm grateful for them, and just something I want to help promote. So we're using our platform the best we can to serve at this time. I want to make sure, Stephen, is there any links that we should give the audience right now for anything specific with the venue association so they can call Congress? Or before we get off here, I want to make sure.
Yeah, it's nevaasoc.org, and how do I get into the, I'm trying to put this in the
maybe
comments.
we can pull it up, or someone, if anyone else that's team, let's see if I can, we're just trying to pull up the association's URL. Is it NI? And I can put it in the chat.
But that doesn't go to the comments. Yeah, I'll get it in the comments.
Okay, well, we can put it in. What is it? Why don't you just say it? And then, looks like. Oh,
you get it?
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. We could have probably kept this conversation going. There's a lot to cover, but we appreciate it. I will send out a follow-up if you are on our email list. And if you're not and you'd like to get on it, anitaforarizona.com. But we'll send out a follow-up with all their contact information.
Team. Let's see if I can.
Oh, I don't know who's talking.
Conversation.
I just pulled the audio of this conversation up. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. You really tricked me there. I was like, I hear myself, but it was from a while ago. We will send this out as a follow-up. And again, this will be up for replay, both here on Facebook, also on YouTube. So if you know anybody that would take an interest in hearing about any of these issues, they can find this on our Facebook and our YouTube, and we'll follow up with everybody. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Seth, Stephen, and Whitney. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.